Drift Island, the Iron Drift King podcast, hosted by Marcel Uhlig and Jacob Gettins.
What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to the Iron Drift King podcast. My name is Jacob Gettins. Obviously, we've got Marcel on. This episode is brought to you by Parts 33. If you are looking for parts, Parts 33 is the spot to go. I've checked out the catalog. It is massive. The amount of things that are on it is absolutely ridiculous. I feel bad for the website developers for keeping everything up and running, because that is not an easy task. But we have a very, very special guest today, somebody that we have alluded to a few times. I have talked about personally on numerous occasions. I'm still trying to find a good nickname for him, but Olof Eriksson, how you doing, buddy? How you been?
I'm good. We actually have a vacation month here in Sweden. So that's a little bit different, I guess, from you other. I think it's all of Scandinavia, right, Marcel?
Yes, yeah. We also have a huge vacation period over here. Lots of people on the street that shouldn't be there while driving. This is what you notice. This is what I notice, because I'm a kind of an angry driver.
There's
a lot of people with way too much time on the road right now.
I gotcha. That's what I like. Oh, go ahead.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so what it is pretty much that every year, people from Sweden, Norway, Finland, guess Denmark too, they get 4 weeks off in the summer as vacation from work. So that's when everyone plans their vacation and go with trailers and stuff all around the countries.
There's definitely a lot of people in the U.S. right now that have they're like, what are you talking about? 4 weeks? Like most people you talk to, if they get 2 weeks of vacation an entire year, they're excited. Like
that's crazy. Yeah, that's great. I think for me, it's also I never have very long vacations. 2 weeks is absolute maximum at a time. But that's just because I'm a business owner, so it's a bit different. But yeah, when I met my wife, she's Finnish. When I met her, she had like 6 weeks in a row, And it's like, how much vacation do you have here? Like 37 days a year. I was like, how is this even possible? Not everyone has that, of course. It's a combination of standard vacation and extra vacation, but crazy,
Yeah, but so the rules are actually that you have to take 4 weeks of vacation, at least for the working, what do you call it, category that I'm in.
Employees,
Yeah. That's, so to put it in perspective, my dad had 6 weeks of vacation, but he had to be a fireman for over 20 years to get 6 weeks of vacation.
Okay.
So everybody gets like 2, I think, to start, and then even in my old role, I was there for like 8 years. And in 8 years, I picked up 1 more week. So I had 3 weeks total over the whole year.
That's crazy,
if I wanted to like take an extra couple of days between Christmas and New Year's, like that came out of my vacation time. So maybe that's why that's why Europeans are so much happier, man. Like North Americans, we get the kind of get shafted when it comes to vacation.
But we complain a lot. I think you're used to a certain thing, and then it's never enough. It's never okay. Then you complain that the weather is not okay. There's always some reason to complain. It's too warm. It's too cold. Last week we had 32 degrees Celsius in Finland. That's super, super much for Finland.
Yeah.
Today we have 15. It's like. But we didn't have wind on the sea yesterday. The day before with 30 degrees, we had lots of wind. There's always something.
It's wild. I don't know. I'm looking forward to spending some more time in Europe. I'm not going to lie, especially after New Jersey, where it was, I think, 35, 36. And then I immediately went down to Florida, where it was 38 every day.
Yeah.
So, but what's crazy, and I have to learn this moving down to Florida, is they just get like at 5 p.m., it's a rainstorm. Like every day that I was there, it was 38 throughout the whole day. You'd wake up and it's like the air is thick. And then 5 p.m., like when we're starting to wrap up work, full torrential downpour for like 30 minutes. And then that's it. And then back to sunny.
But then the air is clean.
Yeah, but like it's muggy again. Like it's humid and thick. Like you can. It's almost like it's like drinking orange juice with the pulp, where like you can feel the air going into your mouth. So, anyways, as much as I'd love to complain about the weather, Olaf, can you give me I actually don't know a ton about your history. I know the people you work with and your influence on the sport already, but can you give me like a quick rundown on who you are?
So, first of all, I'm a father. So I have a daughter that I raised on my own. I've had her, like she's been living with me since she was 9 months, and she's 9 years now. I live up in northern Sweden, so that would be at the same kind of level as northern Alaska.
Wow.
For those from America. So we get a proper winter season and a proper summer season.
Hell yeah,
so, you do.
Hell yeah, you got 8 meters of snow there when I was there or something.
So when it comes to racing or drifting, around 18 years old, I did supermoto, so motorcycle racing. Did the Swedish Championship and also some international races. I've been at the New Jersey track, actually racing outside of that, because they have several tracks, at
they've got a full dirt track and everything else there. Yeah, it's pretty wild.
Yeah. But then I quit that, and it took a couple of years. And I found drifting, and I started building a car, and just because I was interested in the building part of it. And then I found drifting was a good way to get to drive the car. And then I've never really wanted to compete. I don't find it fun anymore. Like I'm kind of over that. And I don't want to do the sponsor stuff, because that was also quite heavy, I think. I was sponsored by brand, and also I had full tire sponsorship with the motorcycle. And that whole part, it's just not for me anymore.
It's tough.
I think it's mentally extremely challenging. It's extremely challenging. People underestimate what it means to feel the pressure to deliver. Right. This is even if it's not the result at the weekend on your race, it's the result that you continuously have to produce, for your partners, and that is a huge challenge.
Because the racing and what you see on TV is it's like 10% of what it is, all of it.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah, it's the prize for all the hard work you have to put in.
Essentially, that's true. That's true.
Yeah. So I started doing drifting, thinking that I'm just gonna drive because it's fun, and kind of keep it there, which didn't really work out, I guess. So I still have the mindset of doing things at a world level, right? And especially around the driving, I think it's really interesting to learn how to do stuff. And, just to improve all the time. So I kind of have the pro mindset without the ambitions. And because of that, even if I do mostly the grassroots stuff, right? I still try to maximize everything, right? And if you look at what we were talking about with it being 10%, right? If you, instead of do all the sponsorship stuff and all the other stuff that's surrounding this, building a extreme car, for example, and maintaining that and finding the resources and the right people for that and so on, it's a huge time consumer, right? So I pretty much try to minimize that to the smallest amount possible, and then just fill that with driving instead. So I guess in a way, I've just been driving more than most people, and finding different ways of doing it to reach. Like, if I want to learn something, what's the smartest way to learn this? Like, for example, chase timing. That's super expensive to do in a pro car, to learn that. You're gonna hit both the wall and the other person quite a lot. The sim, on the other hand, doesn't cost you anything. Maybe someone gets a little bit upset when you do it for a 5th time in a row, but
Yeah,
So
it seems like
that's pretty much, I guess, the ground.
you try to think around the issue and find the most economical and smartest way to do something.
I honestly think you heavily undersold yourself. Like,
Yeah,
heavily.
100%. He's too humble, but it's okay.
Look, we don't know each other. Not even we know each other not even for 1 year. You know, it was mid-September last year. You made a post somewhere that I was interested in. I had no idea who you are, and I contacted you, and we picked up from there quite fast. You built trust, I built trust, and you told me things, and that's also what I talked with Jacob later on in the year. You told me things that I have never even heard or considered or thought could be real, right? Because for me, drifting was, you have some muscle memory, you know how it works, but there's no scientific way to it. But that is absolutely not true. Through you, I learned there is a law, right, for every single thing. And you found a way through your I don't think that you're very efficient in what you're doing with, or very economical with keeping it small. You put a crazy amount of time into that. You know, I'm not saying you're inefficient. I'm just saying that when I introduce people to you and talk about you, I'm always saying, hey, and that guy is a single dad, because having children and being alone with them is a ginormous challenge. And still you managed, to put a lot of effort into building a set of knowledge that is one of a kind, in my opinion. And the absolute best part about what you know is you are also able to explain that. And that is so rare. That is so rare, because there's so many people out there that have a huge amount of knowledge and have absolutely no idea how to translate that into idiot language for me, so I understand it. But you do, and you're good with the computer, you're good with the mechanic stuff, you're good with the mathematics stuff. You just get it. I think that's why I said you absolutely undersold yourself. This is, and I want you to know that I believe that you're one of the greatest minds drifting has ever seen. Right?
Thank you.
People will know that in future, definitely.
So I think I approach this as a scientist in a way, where
a mad one.
So
I was just gonna say, Olof the mad scientist for sure.
Yeah. So I get this idea often, late at night, and I wonder if I do it this way. And sometimes it's completely crazy, but I will go test that for 4 hours, even if it doesn't work. I'm still gonna test it for 4 hours. And in the process, I'm going to find things. And why I can tell others how to do it is because I try to find the ground rules about everything so that I can fully understand it. Because this is actually kind of the third time I'm at world level at something. I actually played computer games at a very high level first, in my teens. And what I learned is that most of the skill comes from the basics. If you nail the basics, you're 90%. And then it's the last 10% that kind of takes you to the very top.
I think before we get into too much, it's very important. Marcel and I are already aware, but it's very important to explain, I guess, what you're doing and who you're working with. I know you are a very humble person, so trying to get you to brag about something is not easy. But for everybody listening, I think Marcel and I have kind of presented you in a very high level, but it's important for people to truly understand why we're saying these things. Because outside of a very tight inner circle of drifting, nobody really has any idea who you are. And that's what's so fascinating about this.
Well, part of that is because I don't really want to be that official person either. And that comes from the part of the racing I did before. And I mean, but I think it's important to be able to reach some people. And sometimes you have to push yourself. What would you call it? Social media wise and stuff. just to get noticed,
just social marketing stuff.
Yeah.
I mean, it's
But
a
general,
necessary
that's not
evil in
something I'm
today's.
looking for. Yeah.
That is true, but it's not. I think it's a huge part. If you know something and you confidently tell people about it in private, you need to back it up, right? And when you're doing this online, like right now, the risk, let's call it risk, is very higher that someone calls you out, right? And I think that's why a lot of people are scared to publicly tell what they know, but it's part of it. And if you really believe in what you're saying, you can say it, you know. But it's, believe me, I think Jacob had that situation. I had that situation many times, that you're like, hopefully I don't fuck this up because I just said something that really has to work out, right? So
that's it's my entire job, really.
So you really need to believe in yourself, and you need to believe in your theory of things, and then everything will work out at the end. Because as Jacob asked you, please go into who you worked with, who you're currently working with, if you are allowed to say, you know, because those are names that people definitely know. Yeah. And they have no idea that someone from North Sweden in a small village, you know, surrounded by a trillion tons of snow most of the year, is teaching those people, or is helping them.
Yeah. So I guess we can start from kind of the start. I learned a lot about a lot of things, and I was actually in this just chat online, voice chat, and Rome came in, Rome Charpentier, and I was kind of just saying that he could do things in a different way, and he's this kind of cool guy that actually kind of listens. Even it doesn't matter who it is, because. And it doesn't for me either. A lot of the times you meet someone who's not even into drifting, and they kind of bring up something you've never thought about, right? Mm-hmm. So he kind of took that bait, and then we started working together. And I've been working with him on his driving for the last 3 years. Shortly after that, Alfred Greenberg.
Can I quickly? Is it okay if I stop you in between? Mm-hmm. Yeah. So just because you cannot go into every single detail, and I know that, but I have been, what's it? Witness to one of those practice sessions online, and the way how those two practiced, we are talking so fine margins of do this 3% less. Like, I don't even know how you would mechanically move your foot 3% in some direction, you know, and this is going to happen. And then I'm asking, like, why 3%? Why this and this? Yeah, mathematically it's blah 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 blah. And do you know what? That shit worked out. You know, that's the craziest part of it. Like, and I was like, it blew my mind that there was a world out there, a drifting world, where people work on details I've never even considered, and you can also back that up, and that is what increased my excitement towards you so much, because I have seen that. I'm a fan of mathematics, you know, and numbers in general. So if it's provable, you know, in the real world and in the theoretical world, if this combines, it's the biggest thing for me. And so I absolutely loved the way how you guys practiced. That was the first time I've been seeing that. And I come from a drifting time where we just went for it, right? And if you had a lot of seat time, you were better, and if not, you were worse. But no one in Europe ever even dared, you know, to say, hey, maybe you should go 3% of throttle in this transition. Like, what the F, right? So, it's just a side note, but I felt such a strong emotion in this time, you know, and I right away called drivers that I knew afterwards. I said, I cannot tell you who, and I cannot tell you why and what, but you won't believe, you know, like, it was so cool, really.
So you kind of came in late in that, because we've been working together for several years already. So when we start off, I always start off at the very basics. And it's the same with Rome or Freddy or whoever of these guys, Alfred and Max. We start by driving in a circle, and out of all of the drivers, so there's a way more drivers than the ones I'm talking about.
Would you like to get into why you start with that circle driving, or do you not? You don't have to talk about it.
Yeah.
But would you like to explain that a bit?
Well, because
why would you make Fredric Aasbø drift a circle? Why would you? In one sentence, that sounds so weird that I think it would be cool to understand.
Yeah. So the reason for that is that if you can't drive in a circle properly, a lot of other stuff is gonna not work out for you, basically. And it's also the basic to understanding what direction you're going. If you're increasing speed or slowing down,
so basically extending the radius or increasing or decreasing the radius.
Exactly. So some of these parts, it's still like some of this very basic stuff, like this thing in general. I haven't heard from anyone else. It's just something you can find in driving in a circle. And when you understand this kind of relationship, then a lot of other problems kind of get solved. And it makes it easier to understand.
I'm so sorry. I will stop you 1,000 times today. I'm so sorry. I don't want to be an ass here. But could you, because if I remember correctly, you got feedback to that kind of task, especially from Fredric. So you asked him to, can you drift a circle with the least amount of corrections possible, right? That was the task.
Yeah.
So what was his feedback to that? Because you would think it would be easy for him, right?
Yeah. So he discovered the secret. Let's leave it at that.
Okay.
Let people go out and try it.
Okay, let's leave it at that. Okay, but he was, as far as I remember, he was very impressed by what that did for him.
Yeah.
Just because it's normal for you, Olof, it's not normal for anyone listening here. This is stuff that most people will not experience for themselves. So please get into it. It's because it is special that someone at this level of driving, or this crazy history that this guy has, is still figuring out something just by drifting a freaking 360 circle, right? It's like...
Well, the problem comes from us spending a lot of money and time to build. So this is what I was talking about before. Build a car and do all the pro stuff, right? That somewhere you go through this kind of grassroots basic stuff. And then you get over this edge where you have these super powerful cars with wise fab and that makes things easier, actually. In general, it's kind of funny, actually. Shelly Hansen got to drive Rudy's car just the other weekend. And she's been like, if I'm going to pro spec, will I be able to drive that pro car? Like that's been a question for her. And she came back and said that it's actually easier. The pro car is actually easier than the kind of the mid-range car that she's using. And
did she elaborate why?
Well, you can save situations that you can't do on a car that doesn't have power, for example. Or you don't have a bad steering behavior that you have to adjust for or even plan for. And sometimes you actually have to plan for the car screwing you up, For example, coming over a bump, you might have a suspension that won't swallow that bump, so it's going to do this instead. So now you have to have a driving technique to fix this. While in the pro car, you don't get in that situation. So, it's you also have parts of driving a pro car that's more difficult. That's no secret. Like everything happens faster. You have to be more precise and so on. But driving when you get to a certain level of driving, let's call it a mid-range driver, it's kind of easier with the pro cars until you get up where you have to compete with pro drivers. But just driving the car itself. So where were we going with that?
I think we were talking about why just drifting in a circle is so necessary to get back to the roots, even at, Fredric Aasbø being the
basic knowledge, basic skills.
Yeah.
So if you're in this pro car, when was the last time you did a circle?
Right. Because we all do it in the beginning, right? Our first drifting day, the first thing we do is, okay, do a circle around a cone. Yeah. Okay, now go wider. Now go narrower. Okay, now do a figure eight, right? Like that's literally day one drifting. But once we get to the pro level, we stop doing that.
Yeah.
So if you're a beginner and you do that, what you want to do is kind of get out of the circle and do the fun stuff, right?
Yeah.
Right.
So that's probably the last time you did a circle, even though you're Freddy.
Right.
Yes. Yeah.
A lot of the time you kind of have to go back. And I can see this with developing all of these driving techniques. Because when I do this, as I said, as a scientist, I create like, is this a ground rule? Is this something that's going to happen all the time? Or will it happen in just certain cases? And then I try that idea in multiple different ways, right? So for example, if let's say, clutching through a transition, is that gonna work in every transition, in every car, in every way? And then I come up with these rules. So, okay, I know that the clutching works in all cars. So that means that, we can add this to
I will raise my
don't
arm
have to
now
think
before
about it.
So I was just, the question just came up for me. Can you answer that? Is drifting a sport where a certain movement in a certain situation will produce always the same outcome? Or is it not that black and white?
Well, if you go into the basics, if you steer left, you're gonna get the same reaction in all cars.
Mm-hmm.
It's gonna go left,
I was hoping for a more complex situation.
well, it's when you start combining these things, right? So if you steer left, if you get on throttle before you steer left, or if you do it after you steer left, you're gonna get different results. And that combination is also gonna be the same all the time. It's the same in the simulator. It's the same on the ice. It's the same in a grassroots car. It's the same in a pro car. So that's why it's so important to go through all of these basics, because when you understand these relationships, you don't have to think about that. You don't have to think like, oh shit, I steered in, what's going to happen next, right?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And even for Freddy, that gives confidence.
Oh yeah, that's a very important. That's a great point that you're making right now. I think knowing that you know what is going to happen at any given point is a extremely important factor for those guys, because they have so little time to prove that they're better than someone else. And I think if you're worrying at the start line, like I talk about my own career, right? I think I have been worrying constantly that do I even know what I have to do after a 100-meter run up? Or is it just like I just do and I hope it's the right thing? Like I think if I think about myself, I think I have been skipping the basics way too fast. And that makes perfect sense what you're saying.
I think because of the speed and the level that drifting or any sport is, like high level sport, like we're talking about the best in the world, right? So we could relay this to anything. What you fall back on in a time of desperation is the thing that you know the most, right? And if that thing is something that's incorrect, that's when you see the faults. That's when you see the problems.
Yep.
So, going to me like playing hockey, like I've been learning a new technique when it comes to goaltending in hockey, that like things have evolved over the last 10 years. So for me, when I'm thinking about what I'm doing, I'm able to utilize that technique. But when things get crazy in the middle of a hockey game, I revert back to what what's ingrained in me.
What
I've done
always worked. Yeah.
Right. I go back to the 10,000 hours I put in a particular style. And I think in drifting, we have the exact same thing. And what it seems like, Olof, is you are trying to get people back to the basics, because at the end of the day, every single turn is still just part of a circle. It's still just a part of a loop. And sometimes that loop is changing, or it's getting wider, it's getting narrower. Yeah. But at the end of the day, that donut, every turn is just one of those donuts. And if you can go back to and go back to being perfect at a donut, when things get crazy, you just revert back to being perfect at a donut.
Exactly. And also when we get into the more advanced stuff, when you have, let's say you have 4 or 5 things happening at the same time, if you don't understand the very basics of each of one of these, you can't tell which one was wrong when it went south, I was actually going to show you this. So I was actually going to ask you to get a screwdriver. But let's say you have a screwdriver and you're gonna hit this point here, like that. And you take the screwdriver, and this looks kind of.
You probably have to do it right in front of you.
You're a little bit out of camera.
Right in front of you.
Out of camera. Okay. Yeah. So you're gonna set it at the screw, right? So take the screwdriver, and this looks kind of amateurish. But if you put your finger on the table and then the thumb to the screwdriver, this is gonna go way faster. It's still just pointing the screwdriver at a screw.
But you support the movement.
Thing. But this is a professional, and this is some, I don't know, amateur.
Yeah, it's me building something. Yeah. I'm just stabbing at it. Yeah.
So and this is the thing with drifting too. Like when you sit and watch for judging as well, like when you sit and watch someone drive and you see them being insecure in the most basic movements, you can't give them a high score, right?
Well, without getting into like judging too much, I think this is a universal thing, that the more judges see changes of input, if you see hand braking in a corner, if you see clutch kicking, if you see left foot braking, if you see any of these techniques that are applied with either hesitation or with haste or desperation, that's where we see mistakes. But the best driving that we see is when somebody goes into a corner and there's no change in what the car is doing. The wheels don't change direction. The engine tone is the exact same. We don't see the lights flashing on and off. That is what we generally expect as a perfect turn or a perfect zone or whatever, is when there is no corrections, really, is what it is. You just you enter in, you set the car,
if you look at that, like looking at a professional in any other profession, I mean, an electrician or plumber, like when you see them make a movement that is it's just one move, and it's just, you can see that it's just right. It's because they've done it so much that their basics are super well timed, or super well, they're super good. And so one of the things that Freddie, because I asked him after the win in the second round, what were some things that you thought was helpful from our winter training? And he said that something that really struck me is that it's not that difficult. And, I can kind of walk you through about just kind of general how it was when we talked about this the first time. I said that if we take Irwin Day as an example, could you explain what you're doing on the track? Like you go off the starting line, what's happening next? And he started saying, like, I'll go through the gears, and then coming into the first corner, we had this issue with the car where it would do a little bit of a shimmy, blah. And it kept going like that, like mid-turn. He had some ideas on the setup, and we were trying this in practice and so on. So this took about 5 to 10 minutes to go through the whole lap. And I said to him, okay, so this is how I would do Irvindale. I would go through the starting line, the starting chicane, and then I go 1, 2, 3, 4, and then I'm going to turn right, I'm going to turn left, and I'm going to sit around, and I'm going to add a little bit of angle towards the end of the turn, and then I'm going to turn right, and then turn left, brake a little bit, and then just sit on angle until we reach the finish line.
Right. It's the most basic way of breaking down Irwindale. Yeah.
Yeah. He was like, well, yeah, it's not more difficult than that. A lot of the times you make it difficult.
Yes, true. 100%. And I've talked to you so often, and I talk to you almost daily, and I still feel like I've never heard what you just said. Like, sometimes you need someone to tell you how simple things are, right? It's like we are overcomplicating it constantly. And I think we do this generally with all the things in life, right? It's like between you and the result is you doing the stuff, right? That's all between you and the result in the end. You don't need to overcomplicate it. Just do it because you know what you're doing.
Mm-hmm.
And do you think we've...
Yeah, sorry.
Oh, no, go ahead. Please go ahead.
No, I lost my thought, so go ahead.
Okay, sorry. Well, do you think that we've... Do you think we've taught and developed and learned so many different techniques, like let's say like brake jabbing, e-brake pulls, like all of, left foot braking. Like, I mean, there's so many smaller things too that, those are kind of the big ones, but there's so many small techniques that drivers do that we don't even really get into the minutia of. But do you think we've developed all of those to basically Band-Aid over what is the main issue, which is just put the car in and drive it? Like, is that kind of where we're at?
100%. You're yeah, that's just true. I don't think anyone said it that way before. I'm gonna bring that with me. I think that was a good way to explain it.
We talk about it like, left foot braking is one thing, but there are ways of like doing progressive left foot braking where you're on a little bit, but then you add a bit more, you stab at the brake, which could then allow the car to pivot around. Like you can add angle in mid corner by doing a harder left foot brake while adding throttle. And it's like, okay, you're doing that because you've done something wrong. Right. So why are you learning a technique and why are you practicing a technique when you should just be practicing how to spot where to enter into a corner and how much angle you need for the whole corner? Right. I think that's why you see like a James Dean, I always think of probably some of the best driving I've seen in my entire life was James Dean's three back-to-back championships in FD. And it was because he was so good at not adjusting the car. And there was some car things that they were doing. I know they played a lot with rev limiter to cut down on the amount of variables that were going on. They would basically figure out the perfect wheel speed for the bank, set the rev limiter there, and that way he could just hit the bank. And then, all he had to do is put his foot to the floor, which is great. But ultimately he has perfect basics, and that's really what won him those championships. I mean, his chasing was incredible, but that's a whole other can of worms. But at the end of the day, he was putting down almost perfect lead runs every single battle he was a part of.
So that's one of the things that I always open with when I bring someone new in. When our goal, like our main goal to start off with, and this kind of, even at the Rome's level, we're still working at this, is that in 2 laps, we're going to qualify. So you come to a new track, you get to walk the track, You get to drive it one lap, and the second lap is gonna be in top 32. Now, how do you accomplish that?
I mean, sim is kind of the only way in my mind. Like that way you can drive it ahead of time, which I guess I don't know if that's cheating, but
yeah. Well, that's yeah. Well, then it wouldn't be one lap. But,
right. Okay. Fair. Okay.
Yeah. So the way to get there is to really understand the basics, because when the less movements you do, the easier it gets. This is what you're talking about, and the only way to do less movements is to know exactly what you're doing, coming in at the right angle, at the right speed, especially changing direction at the right place, using the right technique to do that. I usually use like 5 different initiation types and about 3 different transitions, because some transitions are just better in, for example, braking situation. But when you have this large kind of toolbox to pick techniques out of, that's when you can do this stuff that James does. And I think he spent a lot of time doing this, and also probably getting a lot of technique tips from the family around as well, because they're rally drivers. And a rally driver, I think, is probably the best person to start drifting, because he's heading off on a road he's seen once, actually, because they drive the track and take the notes. And then he's going to have to kind of wing it. And it's the same in drifting. In sim drifting, it's not really, because every day the track is the same. So if you go in and you drive for a while and then you let it sit for 2 weeks and you come back, it's still the same weather, same asphalt temperature, the same grip everywhere. It's just linear. So this it's a really good to learn basics on, but it's not simulating real life. In real life, you go out on track and you wait 3 hours and then you do qualification. And now someone put gravel on the track. There's a lot more rubber. The sun might have set. You might even have a little bit of rain that dried up, so you got puddles. So it's not at all the same track. You can't use the same. You can use kind of the same transition points, for example, but you can't do it in the same way. So you have to do it on the fly.
So it's basically a new track every time. I mean, that's the argument and why drivers push so hard to be like, oh, we need to practice in the same time that we would be competing in. But a competition can be 3 hours. So the way the track is run 1 versus, or top 32 first battle versus the finals, they're 2 very different racetracks when it comes to the amount of grip and the as you said, the transition points. So yeah.
So obviously there's way more to it than just go there 1, 2, 3, 4 left, right, initiate. Of course there's way more details that play a big role that affect your car setup, and then track condition and stuff. But I think if you have that huge set of basic knowledge that you can always rely on, the rest is adjustment, right? It's adjustment of yourself, adjusting to the conditions, and adjusting the car to the conditions.
So, because the next thing that's going to happen after qualification is that we're going to go into battles, right? And a lot of people kind of send it after the other dude and kind of see what happens, right? And,
yeah.
And a lot of people kind of sit and are kind of insecure about what's going to happen. But if you know all the basics, this guy in front of you is he's gonna have to apply to the same physics as you, right? So if he stares in a certain way, there's just a certain thing there's like 2 alternatives what's gonna happen. So, up here we did a series that's called Modified, which is kind of the ease up on the rules so much that you can come with kind of any car. And that means that we only do qualification runs. That's kind of the competition. you qualify, and then you kind of qualify against each other, but you only have one car at the track all the time. And I think this is really great because you can't do a proper chase without being able to do a really good lead, because you're going to base the chase off of the lead.
Yeah, and I think that's why when we see the best chase runs, it's from that, right? Like, it's very tough to see a quality chase run when the guy up front is just all over the place, right? I've seen it. Like, it definitely can happen. It's just not as clear as, Orlando this year. I mean, realistically, Brandon Sorensen and Connor Shanahan, that arguably might have been some of the best driving we've seen in drifting, period. I mean, honestly, anything Connor Shanahan in the last couple of years has been some of the best driving we've seen, period. But that comes from both drivers having pure confidence, and that is arguably one of the most basic layouts and basic tracks altogether. It is an outside zone, a transition, an outside zone, and that's it.
I think they had quite good instructions this time too. Like through the briefings and so on was quite, like, it was quite clear what they're supposed to do, and no questions really. And I think that's also important.
Pretty quick.
And that's something we're working with on Iron Drift King as well, to make it very clear.
That seems so easy, right? To give clear instructions, but it's really not. It's really not. It's I think, talking now from the history of the past months, working with our judging panel for the new regulations and instructions for them. The first 4 hours we spent, okay, what happens in the first 50 meters? Like we were talking standing car run up 50 meters, and we discussed 4 hours. It should be so simple, but it's not. There's so many things that can be interpreted different by drivers, that can be done different by different drivers. It is so complicated to give clear instructions that are understood, and also being able to be translated into actually a movement while you're on track. Very clearly. So you. Yeah, sorry.
So why I get into that is because this is something we struggle with a lot, especially when we're not talking the same language. When I'm helping Alfred, who won the Scandinavian championship last year, it's the same language. So and we're also from the same place, and even if you're in the same country or Europe and America, there's different ways of explaining the same thing on the East and the West Coast, and also sometimes different ideas. You have an idea of what a great line is, and sometimes it isn't the same as what you've been asked to do. And the same when we do this, like, I don't know how many times I thought I brought something up with Rome, we test it and it works, and he comes back and said, "Do you know what I found out today?" And it was that thing that we talked about like 3 months ago, because it's just the language doesn't. Yeah, it's an issue that's it takes a little bit more time to learn, like, because there's not a universal language with it. Have you experienced this?
The two hands side by side, I think, is as close to the universal language of drifting as we have.
Exactly.
Right? Like,
so
I've communicated with people. I've talked to people that saying a single word by basically being like doing one of these, right? Where you're like, okay, your car needs to do this, and I think that's it, but that doesn't often explain the entire story.
No, I think the missing attention span of our generation is also not exactly helping, right? It's like someone is talking 5-6 words in a 30 sentence conversation, that you don't understand, and you just like, and you understood absolutely nothing, right? You completely zone out, you do something different in your mind. And I think the biggest issue, and this is where basics come back into play, is you always compare it to what you already know. But that is, I think that's plain wrong. That's what I said, and I'm not a judge, but that's what I said to the Iron Drift King judges. Please, let's forget everything we know and start from zero, because if we, but usually we do it like this. But usually is not good enough, because usually there's a lot of controversial decisions that I would like to avoid at the Iron Drift King. So please, let's not do it like we usually do it. No, let's figure out a way how it's translatable, how it's understandable, and how it looks good. There are so many aspects that need to line up correctly in order to have the perfect drifting instructions and set of rules. That's I think the hardest task we ever had here, but don't know where I wanted to go with that. To be fair,
I think we all three of us want drifting to get better, and if we keep doing what we've always done, we're going to keep getting what we've always gotten. And I think all three of us realize that, like, we're not happy. I'm happy with the state of drifting. I think drifting has never been better than it is today.
No. Yes.
But I still think we have so much further to go, and to stop now and be like, oh, we've got it figured out is wrong. It's very wrong, because what would anything look like? If in the 1990s we're like, you know what, computers are good. We're good. Like, everything works. I can type stuff. I can, paint. I can play a couple of games. Like, we would never have what we have now. We'd never be able to do what we're doing now. And there are people out there that are like, oh, drifting has gotten too far. We've done this. It's like, yeah, but we have to keep developing it, because we're not there. We'll never be perfect. But if we don't try to get as close as we can, we're going to keep dealing with the same problems we're dealing with now.
Yeah, I agree. And I think the reason why I wanted to have Olof in the podcast is to show people, and here is someone who can actually help you get to that level and fully understand what you're doing. Because I got so many flashbacks while you were talking to my own driving, to my own insecurity while driving. But when you said that the Connor and Brandon, they most probably know what's going to happen in that run, right? They're not just going there and, oh, wish me good luck. Maybe it works, maybe it doesn't, right? This is not how they approach their driving. But this is honestly how I approached my driving, because I had no freaking idea what's happening next. And my results were also bad, right? I qualified well, but I lost a lot of battles because I simply had no control over anything. Also mentally not, because I approached it completely wrong. And I'm just glad that you are out there, and I hopefully people see that and people contact you, because you basically can build a program for every single one of those drivers that want to and can work with you to make them better. That is a fact,
And here's the thing too: every driver is a little bit different from the other driver, and they have different issues too that you have to work on. It could be mental, but most of the time it's just the driving part of it, and a lot of it is about where they come from. So one of the first things I ask is like, what do you do? Like, what do you do for a living? What have you done before? What kind of interest do you have? Like, is there anything else you're doing that you think is fun? And then a lot of the times try to refer to that to get around this issue with the language not being universal. For example, Max Heidrich, he's a downhill biker. And, when you see him in Drift Masters, he's all in, right? There's no one that kind of just sends it, right? The way he does. He is, and that's, that's what you do downhill. You send it downhill.
Yeah, you cannot do it carefully.
Happens.
That's true. Yeah. What happens, happens. Yeah. You can calculate it just to some certain extent, but the rest is based on gravity.
Yeah. And you have Adam Zalewski, Connor Shannon, who else? Yeah, Freddie. They did go-kart before, and you can totally see that in their driving. Like if you think about people that traditionally, all of them have changed now. But if you look back a couple of years, or maybe even more than that, you see these three guys driving low angle. And in a go-kart, you would do that. You want the rear end to slide a little bit. So it's just natural to them to drive that way. That's when you go the fastest. Yeah. Mm-hmm. They've been working on that for many, many years. And they get all the lines correct too, because it's pretty much go-kart lines. But
that further cements your idea of them reverting back to something that is ingrained in them. Like they're driving, Max basically driving a car like it's a downhill mountain bike, where it's like, cool, I'm just going to control what this is doing by utilizing the brakes. But other than that, it's just all throttle, all speed. And I will let the brakes hold me back a bit, because that is how he drives. Like he is foot to the floor. He is a madman, but utilizes momentum to slow himself down and brakes. And then Freddie is, he was almost known for being a boring driver for a while because of how calculated he is. But in go-karts where everything is the same, you have to be calculated. It's not about taking risks. It's about mitigating risks. Like that is how you win. You can dive a corner and run a guy, but the majority of people who do well in karting, it's because they only take very calculated risks. They don't send it wild, because you can't in karting. And that correlates back to the driving style of Fredric Aasbø, which has been changing, I will say, like since you've started working with him. And I've said it in the broadcast, like he is a different driver. He is taking more risks now, but I think he is starting to, he has to learn how far he can push some of those risks. And that's the only thing that's messed him up recently, is that he's pushed a risk that was a little bit further than his comfort zone.
Yes. Yeah, definitely.
But it's called a risk for a reason, right?
Yeah, exactly. So it could pay off, it may not.
Yes, exactly. But that's sometimes you have to do that. So it's not just. I mean, we talk this very sterile here. Like it would be a controlled situation in a laboratory, and it's not. There's lots of stuff going on. Your car may not behave every single time the same. Your tires may have 10 degrees different tire temperature for whatever reason. We have a lot of rubber sticking to your tires that wasn't the lap before. Blah blah blah. Right? There's a thousand things that can be different. So there's always the factor of luck and risk involved. Always.
Yeah,
just mitigating.
I didn't go anywhere with that. I just wanted to point that out.
Yeah.
well, you do see that a lot. Like New Jersey here. Like Connor did a transition behind that was just, you can't do it better behind Freddie. It's just impossible to get that any closer. But I mean, I know. I can see that he did this on purpose, but the proximity that kind of came out of it, that is so like, let me put it like this. If you change speed by 2 miles per hour, you're gonna travel 3 feet further or less, depending on what way you go. So that means that if the car in front of you, if you misjudge his speed by 2 miles per hour, in 1 second you're gonna close 3 feet. So you see how kind of when you then go to a pro car, and this is where pro cars are more difficult than street cars. You have cars that accelerate like crazy, right? So if you mistime your acceleration compared to the other car, the gap is just gonna, expand massively. Because in 1 second, if you misjudge it by 2 miles per hour, that's 3 feet, and 3 feet is not close proximity, not on the Freddie and Connor scale. So
can you just to ask that in between, are you able, if someone works with you, are you able to close that gap for them as a chaser? Are you able to help them? Because just I want to finish the thought so everyone might understand where I'm going or why I'm asking that. We just learned that a very, very, very small change in speed is producing a big gap, right?
Yeah.
How to predict, how do you know that the lead car is going to do that or not do that? Or is it staying at the same speed it has always been? Do I just, as a spotter of the chase driver, does the spotter just time all transitions, all laps of a certain driver? Or how do you get there to avoid this? I don't want to, you don't have to explain how if you don't want to, but can you make it happen that me as a chase driver, if I would come to you for your services, for your teaching services, would you be able to close that gap for me? Do you have a way of doing that?
Yeah, I mean, because here's the thing, in a go-kart or F1, 1.5 seconds or 1 second, that's a lot of time. But in drifting, drifting is racing with a handicap, where we have to go on the outside of the turns and we have to do a certain movement. So, in the judging regulations, again, you have the line score and you have the angle score and you have the commitment, right? And commitment is pretty much transitions, more or less. And as a chaser, you're supposed to copy transitions, you're matching angle and matching line, right? So you can kind of, because the lead already have a handicap, you can take a part of one of these to gain back that proximity. But now you don't have 100% score in the chase. So the only way to get 100% score in the chase is to predict the other car's movement perfect within half a mile per hour.
And you can do that? You can help people do that?
Well, we can get close, but to do it at that level, to get a perfect chase where you nail all these categories, first of all, you have to have a little bit more grip, because when you have, maybe use these cars, right? If you have two cars like this, the transition, can you see it? Yeah. If you have two cars that transition like this, the chase also has to have proximity, so he has to move up, and then the next transition comes, so he has to move back, and then move up again. So this movement means that we can't copy everything, so we have to make some sort of adjustment.
This is the moment when you said this movement means that we cannot copy everything. I think no one has ever thought that you just said. I think 80% of the drivers just wing it. To be fair, I don't know if it's just me projecting my own driving from the past to the new drivers, and maybe they're way more methodical, way more clinical than I have ever been or that I can imagine. But I cannot imagine there's many drivers out there who are thinking. Do you know what I mean? And I don't think it's always. I don't also think it's the driver's job. I honestly think why James. Just for James, I know that, and also think Connor has a very good one. Your spotter has to understand that, I think, and you have to be able to talk the same language, and I mean not just like literal same language. I mean like same understanding for things. You cannot be the driver cannot be the only one responsible for having all those thoughts. I think that's impossible. He has to be able to put it into action, but
So let's keep that spotter thought, because first I want to tell you about this is one of the questions that Freddie had for me with where I want to position my car on on the lead car. Like you can, some people say like I aim for the door, or I aim for the right fender or rear fender. This doesn't matter. Wherever we end up, that's a result of how well we did the other stuff.
So they're thinking about the wrong thing. They're aiming for the end result, and you're telling them, no, just transition like this, and where you end up is where you end up.
Yeah, exactly. So that's
okay.
Yeah, that's how it works. And I mean, if someone, they think about this stuff, of course, because otherwise that question wouldn't come up. And a lot of people go through a lot of testing, practicing and trying to find where they should be on the other car. But this is what I tried to say in the beginning, right? You're a pro driver and you have all this other stuff. You don't have time to do this. I've spent thousands of hours trying to figure out like how this works. And it takes a very long time to figure out this, that you don't have to aim for a certain spot. The spot is depending on what's coming up or how well you actually did before this. So
and then that's your reference point?
So that's... What do you mean?
No, I mean because you said that don't aim for a certain spot, right? Aim for the best transition possible, and where you end up, this is where you ended up, and this is where you try to stay. Correct?
Yeah, exactly. Because you can.
I want to be right about something here.
Yeah. No, that's exactly right. It's yeah. No, that's totally correct. Yeah, I don't know where I'm going with that, but with the spotter, here's the thing with spotters. Let's say you're in Drift Masters, and at some tracks you have a lot of crashes, which means that you might get 4 practice laps, right? So as a driver, you get 4 practice laps trying to figure out all these points where you're going to transition, and kind of where to get on throttle and what kind of transition you want to do, and all of this stuff, right? So how many laps does the spotter get if there's 40 drivers?
Yeah, 160 laps. Yeah,
160 laps. So you get 4.
Oh, because he's getting everybody.
Yeah. And the spotter's getting 160. So we include the spotters as well when we teach the drivers. We don't go through everything because it's not important, but we go through all these things you can spot from the outside. And the way I spot, I can go through that too, because that's not really my job. I spot in the way that I take my driver's driving, and then I add notes to where other drivers do things differently. Because he's gonna, when he goes in chasing, he's gonna assume that the other guy is doing what he's doing in the lead, and he basically just need to know that at this transition he does it off throttle while you do it on throttle. Because if you're on throttle when he's off throttle with a pro car, you're gonna be on the other side of his car.
Yeah.
And that, it's going to end with disaster. Even if you catch it, you're going to leave a gap because, what we just talked about.
Yeah. Either going to close that gap really quickly and hit him, or you're going to get gapped because they're on throttle while you're scrubbing speed.
So are you essentially saying that your driver is supposed to drive like he would usually drive, and just, don't get me wrong now, just adjust his driving at the point where the lead car would do something different? That's why the spotter's notes to that particular driver is so important.
Yes, exactly. So
sounds so simple. It's not, but it sounds very, but if you break it down in some simplicity, it makes it easier, right? If you are supposed to constantly copy and adjust what the other one is doing, and you never know when. And then we are talking Valino tires, that decrease, what is like brake? What's the word? Accelerate and decelerate. That decelerate the car so fast just because you went off throttle a bit, And I think you're overwhelmed. But if you know that this driver has the tendency of doing that, and you are aware of it, you might be a little bit quicker in reacting to it.
Well, of course, because you have to do everything the lead is doing before him. Otherwise, he's going to gap you.
So you don't react. So you.
Yeah, because let's go back to that example, right? 2 miles per hour is 3 feet. What's a human reaction time?
A tenth of a second, depending.
No, it's actually way more than that. It's about a quarter of a second. So what's a quarter of 3 feet? It's almost a foot just in reaction.
Yeah.
Yes.
Right. So when you're within a foot of a different car, of the lead car, you can't react to it fast enough. You're going to hit him. So you have to predict that.
So it's just, obviously there's a few ways that you can do that, but the majority of it is just understanding what they're going to do ahead of time. Like if your spotter says they're going to decel on transition, he's e-braking through this corner, you need to know that. And that way, when you feel like you're at the end of that corner, when the car naturally is going to start to transition, you have to mirror the technique that they're going to use in order to get into that same spot.
Yeah, or actually you don't have to exactly do that, but you have to use a technique that will accomplish the goals that are set. And the goals set for chasing is different in different series as well, which is also why we have to know all the basics so we can adjust to what they actually want to see.
I just want to add something, Olof, because in all your humbleness, I don't even know if this is a word, you forget to mention that when you say drivers have to predict that, you have to also add, and you can tell them how, you can teach them how, because I know that you can, because you told me how, right?
Yeah.
So all the drivers out there listening to this, you're not left alone with someone saying, "Oh, you just have to predict that." No, Olof is actually capable of telling you how and teaching you how to predict that. So I just want to add that because you don't add that, but you should because you are capable of doing those things, and you're capable of teaching other drivers, performing better, and being able to predict other drivers' movements, because I know you showed me how. So, and if I understand that, everyone will understand.
Well, it goes back to this conversation when we talked about driving in a circle, right? If you learn how to drive in a circle properly, you don't really have to care what happens when you're in a circle, because you know what can happen and what cannot happen.
Autopilot. Yeah, you want to be an autopilot. You want it to. You want to know nothing but how to do that perfectly. Like really, when you've mastered something, it's when you can't screw it up. Like you're just doing it constantly over and over and over again, and the default is perfect. That's when we see the best driving. Yeah,
and I mean, I think games have had an advantage for a long time, but I think there's quite a bunch of drivers right now that might be at his level, but not have the rest of the program to support that driving.
I would agree. We see it. We see drivers who are able to drive at that level and compete it. I mean, it's not like he's perfect. It's not like he's never lost. But there are a lot of mechanical things that have happened, or mindset things that have happened, or just, we talked about luck. Like there are luck situations that drivers have been on the wrong side of. And I've always heard luck is preparedness meets opportunity. And I feel like there are drivers who maybe don't have the program that are as prepared as obviously a Vortaus or an RTR. And that back end of things, the mechanics, the spare parts, the hotels and the foods and the meals and a spot to rest, like that doesn't happen for a driver that's doing the year on a quarter of the budget of RTR, even an eighth of the budget of RTR. And those things play a massive factor as well. They might be just as good of a driver, but if they didn't sleep well last night because they had to sleep in their trailer and all they've had is, French fries from the booth, that is a very different than a James Dean who's slept in a very nice hotel and had a fully balanced meal before getting on track.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's also like,
he's such a prince. No, but it's a fact. Every professional athlete has to fuel themselves. Just a quick note to that. I have been flying back from a short trip to Tenerife in March, and I had the Finnish Olympic swimming team for under 18-year-olds. There were like 30 of those kids that were with me in the airplane. They had been in the training camp because I didn't know what they are. They all looked super fit, crazy fit. And there was a girl sitting behind me, and I've seen that she ate very, very healthy food, like super, like absolutely not airplane food. Okay, it was something specially made, all the nutritions that you need. And then that's why I asked them what they were doing, and then I understood, because they're athletes, they need to be on top level all the time. So there are so many small things that play a huge role to your mental fitness and to your physical abilities that a lot of people forget, or they simply don't have the money, or time to do it.
Yeah, so I would like to bring up Rome as an example of that, because Rome is currently his driving level is very, very high. He's still a grassroots drifter, though, kind of on the way of breaking through. And when something's, when he get hit, he personally has to fix it. And that's a huge difference when you're going to predict something that's going to end up either great or catastrophe. I'm sorry for that. So mentally, that's a challenge, right? That he has to overcome that James doesn't, because RTR seems to, be able to fix a burnt down car over a weekend. So
I'm not sure how aware both of you are of the history of James in Europe. I mean, like, not the overall history. I mean, like, his driving. I don't want to overdo it now with my estimation, but I think in 5 years of Drift All-Stars, what was the most dangerous series in Europe at this time, because it was on every track, and you had to go very close. Walls have been a exception at this time still on most of drifting in Europe. I think the hardest crash he had in 5 years of Drift All-Stars was a rear bumper, and I mean it. And he won maybe it has been 3 or 4 years, but I think it was 5 years, and I think he won all championship titles all 5 years. And he never had more than a bumper that was broken. Like maybe a tie rod that was bent because you hit someone's wheel. But how is this possible? How, and I think that level, that's what we were talking about. That's the greatness of him, right? This is unbelievable, because he had to go over the top, risk everything every time, but his risk looked different than our risks. I crashed my car 5 times in one season, He crashed at 0 in 5 years. This is unbelievable. Like, how is this possible?
Well, he has had the basics down in a whole different way.
Obviously. Yeah, obviously, that's true.
And when that's also something that my clients discover quite early on, is that even though we haven't started doing chase, they discover that I'm starting to see when this dude is going to go off track or spin around.
Yeah, you start to, you inherently predict it. You can see the way the car is moving. You can understand, he's on throttle. His wheels are in this direction. if nothing else changes, if I don't see the brake lights go on, if I don't see the rear wheel lock up, the only physical location for that person to go is into the wall or off track, because, we don't have to dive into all the physics of it, but it's the only place they could go.
Exactly. And you see this, you can see this already in the transition. Sometimes I can see a transition. We're sitting around talking with people on Discord or by a TV, right? And I can say, oh, and then it takes like 3 seconds, and then he goes into the wall. Because when he does this movement at this speed, the only place he can go is into that wall.
Yeah,
you know that.
Yeah, of course, and because it is the same. And this is also, when people say that assetto corsa, sim drifting, or ice drifting isn't the same, but all of these fundamentals are the same. Like you're still in the same physics.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you're still on Earth. Like,
yeah, exactly.
At the end of day, right? Yeah. I know there's something we kind of discussed before the show as well, talking about maybe one of the biggest divides too between American and European drifting is the run up, right? Like we talked about the first 50 meters, something that Iron Drift King and everybody surrounded. And I don't even think we talked about this, but Olof is obviously very involved in the development of the rule set and track layout and all that stuff. I mean, I don't even think we touched on that. But,
no, we didn't.
Yeah.
We kept it very mysterious.
Yeah.
So no, yeah.
But I think it's important to say that because we're chatting with somebody who has a very different and unique mindset when it comes to drifting, in a way of looking at it and describing it that's one of a kind in a lot of ways. But let's talk about the run up a little bit, because that is make or break for so many runs, right? If the run up is set correctly, it sets everything else up.
Yeah, so all of these basics you can also apply to making the tracks, because we know that if you make this big turn, you're gonna have to have a certain amount of distance to slow down before you make the small turn, for example. Mm-hmm. And the same with the start and giving advantages or disadvantages to the chase or lead. And the easiest way to win in chase is just to be better at the drag race. There's quite a bit of technique into starting correctly too. And I was thinking about if we would go through what we do with a driver, the start is what I would like to do, because I think it's so important for the show. Like, we don't want to come to a show
100%.
And see someone coming in like 5 car lengths behind the other dude,
and then trying to catch up in really stupid ways, cutting corners, and then that's absolutely, no one wants to see that. That's correct. Yeah. Mm-hmm. So can you get more into that? Could you explain?
So what we can do is we can run this in the simulator, and I'll go through what a normal session looks like.
Right now, yeah?
Yeah.
Okay, you should be able to, on this screen, if you hit the share button. I don't know what. I mean, I don't. Okay, do you have everything in English on your computer, or is it all in a different language?
Yeah, it's in English. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, the start is, I mean, there's I've seen multiple ways that it's been done. Obviously in the US, they've got side by side with a chicane for the lead driver to kind of slow them down, which can work. And I mean, I don't know if it's necessarily a perfect system. And then the way they initiate is going to be, in that case, like the 3-2-1 cone. And it's usually directly into a zone. Whereas in Drift Masters, it's more head to head. And oftentimes there's a line that they want the front wheel to go on. Those are, I mean, I would say those are probably the two main ways that we have run-ups and initiations at this point.
I have always been amazed by, because those chicanes are quite tough, actually.
Yeah.
But drivers learn to drive them very fast over the course of the weekend. And I always wondered, does this chicane even have any impact anymore? Like, because I think the biggest issue is that, I think Olof will go into it, but I will just share my own perspective.
Mm-hmm.
So even if you try to jump the light, or you start from further behind, if you have the feeling you go past the lead car, then you go off throttle, and that's mostly the time when the other one is moving away, because that split second of going off throttle is like
yeah.
What it's like. I mean, it gives you all the distance between each other. So I think that's so complicated. But maybe Olof has a way. I don't know.
Yeah.
I like this.
So this is quite easy to do. When you have the sim, it's not more difficult than start it up and just sit here. And that's why I think it's a tool that you should have if you're a pro driver. So I actually don't have to change that much.
I'm already getting dizzy from just this.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So
if you are listening, if you're listening to this show, please watch, because this is where, obviously we're going to explain what's going on.
All right. So my sound level was way too high.
My head was like...
He's tilting out of the car a little bit.
Yeah, I actually got some trouble with my speaker system.
It's all good. It's all good. I do think that the sim is so critical when it comes to the driver development. I mean, a great example, Hiro Manoa, like the way he's able to, talented driver nonetheless, obviously did incredible things in Japan and still is, but the fact that he can quickly pick up on a track he's never seen in real life and then drive it the way he is insane. So
yeah, and even if we don't have a simulator like Max, for example, we can still use it.
You can explain a lot of stuff with the simulator.
Yeah, exactly. And one of my roles is to prepare for a competition, and I can go through the track and see what kind of things that might pose a problem and what might not. Because
could you explain what you're doing right now?
So right now we're actually just waiting for the guy that's trying to join up.
Okay, good. So we get another driver.
Yeah, exactly.
He's living over there.
He's on the way.
So he's living over there around the track. He's coming soon.
Yeah. Is it?
There you go.
Are you able to say which driver you're up against? Just purely out of curiosity.
Yeah, so this is one of the guys from Drift Time, which is a Swedish group that are helping us with some things with Iron drifting too.
It's basically a group of hardcore fans that are very knowledgeable, and they are doing that sport or they're following the sport since a very long time. Huge fans, very critical guys, but nothing like just bullshitting. It's very fact-based criticism, and it's great to work with them.
So I had to wait for this countdown here. This is part of the system. But could you tell me how would you do a start? Like, I'm gonna do chase starts now. So how would you set this up?
I mean, realistically, what most people are doing, I mean, and I'm going to reference this more towards FD just because that's my background. Most drivers now are leaving at the same time, if not a little bit earlier than the lead driver. They don't have to go through the chicane, so they're able to get up more or less side by side with them, but then usually fall back behind them, and then the lead driver will initiate, and then soon after, the chase driver will initiate. I mean, in a perfect world, they'll initiate at the same time, but it's very rare that ends up happening.
So let's start by the starting line. So I'm reacting to him.
Yeah. Oh, okay. So you just got completely gapped on that one right off the bat. Yeah.
So he was a little bit quicker than expected. Right. Like, he was fast through the gate. I can just ask him to drive like a little bit slower through the gate just to help us out.
Yeah.
But you were with him, or like you were with him up until initiation.
Yeah, exactly. I was a little bit in front of him, but he was really fast here too. So I started when he started. So I waited for him to start, and then I started. And I'm lining up next to him, like this is normal.
So this is a chicane.
So this is what usually happens.
Right. So he feint initiates, and now you have to dive in to try and catch up. But yeah.
Yeah, so you can see at this point I'm reaching him like up on the side quite early on. And because I don't want to let off, he's just going to disappear. I keep it pinned, but then I'm stuck when we're going to initiate, right?
Right.
So what do we do to improve on this situation? Like what's the first step?
I mean, you would have to a spotter might tell you like, oh, this is how he's initiating, and you would have to find a technique or a way to mirror that.
Yeah, down there at that point, right? But let's see if we can fix it from the starting line. Yeah.
I would, because it looked like that the reaction to his initiation flick gave you that gap. So if you initiate before him, I think you would be closer.
All right, let's try that. Let's try do it that way. All right.
Mm-hmm. Of course, now the stream is hanging.
Uh-oh.
Yeah. No dice. So,
okay, I didn't even see what happened. I had.
Basically he went off. Yeah, it's all good.
Okay,
but
so I didn't miss anything.
No, so what happened was that if I initiate earlier, I'm not gonna make the first corner. I can initiate in a different way to fix that problem, but I would rather fix it down here. So let's try this instead. Right. Let's try from this side. So I'm starting behind him now.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Like most the Drift Masters drivers, they do that a lot.
Okay.
Oh.
You got jumped.
Jumped. Yeah. Let's see if he gets it this time. This is when you don't have contact with the other driver.
Yeah, it's all good.
It makes it a little bit more difficult. All right.
You're staggering back by, let's say, a full car length.
Yeah.
And I'm going to do the rest exactly the same. So I'm just going to floor it down the straight.
Okay. So he's going to go through the chicane. You're pretty much right on him now. You're at his rear quarter, and you're in there. Okay, cool.
Would you be able to explain the physics? Because you did before, and I still don't get it. You started. You didn't jump the light. Okay, you didn't jump the light, but you. Let me just speak my thought. You started at the exact same time than him, but 1 car length back, 1.5 car length back.
Yes.
Why have you been with him at what? How have you been with him at initiation? Because of his chicane, or?
Well, yeah. First of all, the chicane is there to not give him an advantage in the start. So it's actually to give us an advantage that he has to slow down. So that's where we catch up, even if I started a little bit behind him. But because we're now behind him, we're gonna have that distance at the end of the straight too. Mm-hmm. So that means that instead of being up on his side, we're now further back in the back of the car. But still, we go through the start chicane here a little bit faster than him because we're just flooring it down the straight, right?
Mm-hmm.
So
and the speed and we had a longer distance. We had more time to build up speed.
Yeah.
Yes. Okay. So okay. Mm-hmm.
So we're also, as you say, we're also gonna reach slightly higher top speed. So what I'm gonna do now is I'm gonna roll first.
Yeah.
And
So you jumped the light a little bit.
All right. So this time you can see I clutched up. I did one of these where I release the clutch, start the car rolling.
Yeah.
And then I clutch in, and then I do another start.
Okay.
So what happens is that instead of starting with tires that are standing still, we know now we're rolling a little bit, which means that we don't have to make that initial kind of twitch to the wheels. So grip goes up in the starting moment. And you could see that I gained quite a lot more on him. And he, as I told him to drive kind of slowly through the gate. But if this was a fast driver, we might have to do that to not lose on reaction time. And you know, it's also a stress moment when you release the clutch and want to go. And the other car is taking off really fast, so you kind of floor it and you spin away all the grip. Okay, so we can do that one more time.
Okay. And you're right there next to him at that point. Yeah. So a little bit wider there, but so basically by getting the momentum going in the beginning with that small just roll, you're not having to overcome all of the potential, like basically the weight being held back. I mean, I could get into some physics terms here, but I don't think we need to. Yeah.
Exactly. So that's something we are allowed to do.
Yeah, a rolling start, essentially.
So you see how much speed I can gain from that.
Yeah. Yeah, you almost got ahead of them there on initiation at that point.
Exactly. So we actually want to do that with everyone. All right. So the next step is that we don't want to pass him through the gate. We actually, most of the time, it's just better to initiate behind the other car. Right. So what we do now is we try to adjust the speed here. All right. So that was a lift off. So I used the throttle to slow down. And because it takes so much time to get on throttle again. And we have this, you know, we talked about predictions and how fast you accelerate and what the distance is, right? It's going to create this massive distance. So the next thing we're going to do is we're going to add several launches. So as soon as we feel like we're gaining ground on him, we're going to launch again.
So just clutch in again?
Yes, exactly. So we're going to roll start.
So we basically like...
I'll have to redo that one. All right.
Spun on that one. So you're instead of coming off throttle, you're keeping the throttle where it's at and almost utilizing the clutch as either traction control or an aid to slow the car down. Not even slow down, just not go as fast. Oh, interesting. Yeah, you can see it with the blue and the green what you're doing between throttle and clutch. Huh.
Well, for me, you have to explain it again.
So in the same way that like traction control works, where it is modulating throttle, right? It is modulating the amount of grip. Okay. He's doing that utilizing the clutch. So he's on gas still, but every time he feel like he's going too fast, he clutches in a little bit. That way the engine RPMs actually go up. So when the clutch comes off again, you're not coming at a boost. You're not losing engine RPM. The engine is just changing the amount of load that's on it.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, that seems basic, but obviously it's not. You can hear drivers traditionally, they're like, wah, 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 but like that's more because they're coming on and off throttle constantly as opposed to modulating traction and speed with just the mechanical that is the clutch engaging and disengaging.
Exactly. So so we've gone through some of the things. There's obviously more things that might happen, but these things, they will take care of the big, like the main issues you might have. So Let's go back to the drawing board. Let's see how I get this out like that.
There we go.
All right, so we got the cones.
You have to move the drawing board more.
I can change it after if you click on the screen.
Okay.
Yeah, we can. It's all good.
So position. Maybe I should.
If you got a black marker, that'd be easier. The red's a little tough to see.
It would, but I don't have. So,
okay.
All right. I think we're gonna have to go with this. All right. So starting next to each other means that we're gonna travel together next to each other here. And if you slow down with the throttle or even with the clutch at this point, you're not gonna gain as much speed into the first corner.
Right.
So we move back.
So you will also lose proximity after initiation because you have been slower at initiation.
Yes.
Right.
Exactly.
So not just you have not been close from beginning, you also have been slower. So no chance of catching up.
Yeah,
okay,
exactly.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And if you're stuck on the inside here, you're stuck on the inside in turn 2. Mm-hmm. Which means that you can't keep the same speed. Because if you have the same speed, you're going this direction and this dude is going that direction. Right?
Yeah.
If you say so.
So
well, it's two different angles. One's traveling a shorter path, one's traveling a longer path. So at the same speed, they'll go two different distances.
They're gonna exactly. At the same speed, when you turn, you're gonna go the same radius. Which means that this car is going that radius, but it ends up in the grass, and this ends up in the zone. Yeah. So you're gonna have to drop speed and leave room. So what we did next was to move back. And if this car is fast now, when it takes off and we react to that, with a pro car, he'll get at least to this place here, right? So we created this gap. But we're at least behind him when we come to this place. And we also have more potential for speed because we have a longer distance. So what we do next is then to do the roll start. So our wheel isn't standing still. It's actually moving forward. And that means that we're accelerating. It's like if you've ever drag raced someone, especially in slippery conditions, like you get nowhere if you start from standstill.
Yeah, because you have to try to move the car forward without overcoming the coefficient of friction of the tire to the pavement.
Exactly.
So the amount of energy that's being imparted has to be in perfect balance to leave the line. Whereas if you're already rolling, you now have a larger room for error when it comes to getting on throttle or dumping the clutch.
Exactly. But then we might be back at that problem being up in front.
Right.
Because now we're so fast. So what we do next is we try to take away that extra speed in the best way possible. Mm-hmm. And if we do that,
so we aim for same speed but correct position.
We actually want to have slightly more speed because we want to be like after the initiation, we want to be up on the side. So we have to gain those. Let's say it depends on where you want to be on the door. If you're going to be up in the front wheel, we're going to have to gain way more, have way more speed. Most likely just running over that dude. But so what we add here is clutch control. So we do multiple starts. And why we do like full starts is because turbo cars suck. They if you let up or like clutch up without throttle on, it's just gonna die. And then this distance it's not 2 feet. It's like 3 cars.
Yeah.
So that's why we do multiple starts. And the other reason is the clutch is way faster. When you clutch in and clutch out, that's faster than lifting the throttle.
Okay.
And you also have more control with two pedals than one.
Mm-hmm. That makes sense. I mean, that makes a lot of sense.
And it's a lot of basics, right?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it is. It's just trying to think about it
practicing starts. I think this is where it comes to is the difficult part, right? So who is practicing starts? Like there's a few guys I know that they do that and they're talking about it, but it's never really practiced.
Yeah,
and it's a very difficult thing to do, and that is also the reason, because it's so difficult, is that and because it has a deciding factor over how good the show is, over how good the battle is, that we decided for Iron Drift King we're not going to do a start in that traditional way.
Throw it all out, start over.
Exactly, yeah. Because it was pretty simple to make those decisions if you consider what do you want to gain, right? What do you want to have? We want to have the closest battles possible from beginning on to the end, right? And we want this of every battle, not just the guys that produce that naturally. No, we want this from every pair. So we have to take out the element of messing it up in the start. And that's what we did. That's what we did. So we're not going to see those kind of problems in Iron Drift King this year because our cars will start behind each other.
Oh, okay, so it'll be more of a single file.
Yes, and they have a run up to regroup, to be close together before they actually get into real action. So it will not be a traffic light or like a starting light drag race at all.
Damn,
because it makes no sense to us.
Yeah. Well, it's not only we're talking about this is good for the show, right? But what's good for the show is good for the drivers, and I think a lot of people miss that. The better the show can do, the better attendance, which means that it's easier for you to get sponsors and be
better organic growth because people go home and say that was insane.
Yeah,
that is that. When we think back to the first episode of this podcast in December, when we announced all those changes, we can come back every time again and again and again to the fact that we promised we want to do something to develop that sport in the right direction. We want to help that, right? And that means we have to go new ways. And just by changing the starting procedure, essentially, we will have way less battles with bigger proximity because we will have a lot more battles with fantastic proximity because they're closer together from the start on, So, and this is not, I think there's people out there that think that you make it so easy for them. Absolutely not. Because of this procedure, they will be 25 kilometers per hour faster now at entry. So it's definitely getting harder after that, but that's again great for the fans because it will be more exciting. It will be more spectacular than it has ever been. So, but it's great that there's people out there like Olof who can explain to you how to do that if you have to do it. But us as organizations, we will think before we teach 64 drivers how to do this better, we rather take that element out and make sure the chance for the fans to see greater battles is higher.
Yeah, I'll make sure that we post that, and I think we can put it up on screen or something like that to make sure because it's obviously
we'll do it that way.
Yeah. Your handwriting's as good as mine is, so I think
it's horrible. There's a lot.
So it's the three of us then.
Yeah. We all should have been doctors. That's how bad our handwriting is.
Yes.
Well, I think it is, being good at something to the very top level means that you're really bad at other stuff. And I'm really bad
yes.
at a lot of stuff.
I believe your brain has a very limited storage space, and if it's full, it's full. There's stuff that has to fall out that the other stuff can develop. It's I don't know if this is true. It's just my theory.
I think you're right. There's lots of stuff that I'm just not great at, and I think it's I've traded that off to be able to speak on the fly or do the weird things that I get to do for a living. But I really do think that this is it's hard to say whether or not this is going to be the correct thing. I think seeing some of the sim stuff and understanding where the big faults are in the system we have now puts us to a point where we need to do it. And I think it's also important for people to know that like it's not like you're just like, oh, we're going to change this and see what happens. I already know that Olof has probably put in 1,000 hours of testing this at different tracks and different layouts with different drivers, turbo versus LS versus, whatever, to be like, okay, this system, this rolling start is going to provide us with the best tandem. It's going to provide us with the best first outside zone or inside clip or whatever we do at the track. Yeah. And once we can set that up, now the rest of the run is set up for success. We're building a good foundation for an entire run by having a different start procedure.
Yeah, and every little speed drop you get, early on is something you're gonna have to make up by not filling the criteria, in these categories of the judging. Yeah. So it's gonna even if you reach him again, you're already paid for it.
That's a good way of putting it. Yeah. Yeah. Even if you've had to give up something else, you've had to give up angle to get proximity. You've had to give up line to get proximity. There's something that has to be sacrificed. But with this rolling start, we don't have to worry about the dig and getting a perfect launch because you're already within momentum. And by having them tip to tail, you can keep a closer spot without having to worm the car around or find a different line or shoot the car over.
I mean, just visually, if you're side by side, you're gonna have to do this. So now I'm choosing between him or the track.
Right.
But if I'm behind him, I can see both him and the track.
Yeah, it's such a small thing. It's such a small. I mean,
there's so many details that play into it. It's crazy, really.
I'm super curious because I've obviously been to the facility. I understand the layout. Like, I think from an infrastructure point of view, how we're going to make all that work, but that's not my department. That's all on Marcel to figure that part out. Cause I mean, that's the only part where I'm like, okay, like where are they coming in? How are we going to make this work practically? But
it will be different. It will be different than it has been. Otherwise, this wouldn't work, right?
Right.
But it has been. That's why I said we talked like 4 hours just about that to get some common sense of, okay, is this really free of faults, right? And it had to be because you can now argue, okay, but at the moment when the guy's then putting throttle, then this can happen again. No, also this has been ruled out. I'm not getting into now why and how, but we really tried to find the perfect solution here. And I'm not this for sure. We have to also add this cannot work on every track. I'm pretty sure.
Right.
Yeah. Right. So Olaf's knowledge is very, very valuable. How to start when you have to. We just thought we can do it in a way that we can make sure we have just a higher amount of very close battles because we want to have that. We have a top 64, so we don't want this in the top 8. We want it in the top 64 up until the finals, right? So we want people to go nuts. We want the fans to get what they paid for. We want people to tell their neighbors, after they go home, or tell anyone you meet because it was so great. So. And all that is so important. And drivers will get better media from it. Yeah. They will get a higher endorphin level. It will play into so many factors that we believe are important, and it will be for the what is it, betterness?
The best of the show.
Yeah, I want to say for the good of drifting, right? Like it will benefit drifting, and we promise to do that, so we're going to do that.
Yeah. This is, I think, because this is a standalone event, it gives us that opportunity that we can give this a shot. And I know this is not the only change. Like there's so many more that are coming down the pipe, which is your cue if you're listening or watching to make sure you subscribe and follow Iron Drift King to make sure that you get all these updates. But this is just a small piece of the puzzle. And this goes back to what you said about forget what you already know, forget what you've already done. Don't keep referring back to that. What is the problem we have? Initiations get weird. People get gapped. The rest of the run is basically blown out. Okay. How do we fix that problem? And don't refer to how you did it before. Yeah. The fix to that problem is no standing start drag race. So then you don't have to worry. And you don't have to worry about misshifts as much either. Because I would assume
exactly
they're going to come in, they're going to be pretty much in the gear they need to be in by the time they get to that point. So those weird misshift. The other one is like hit cones. Like, I don't know if we have a cone there, but like there's nothing more depressing than getting ready for a battle, especially as an announcer. Get everybody hyped, you're in the zone, you're ready to go. And then someone knocks a cone, you're like, cool, all that hype and momentum and excitement I've just built is completely gone.
Right. And also as a fan, I can tell you the moment when you always want that run over the other drivers is going to win, right? So you hope the chase driver that you're rooting for is really good. And you know he has it in him or her. Mm-hmm. And it's over. It's over after 3 seconds because there is a 3-car gap, happening for whatever reason, because the start didn't go as it should, or even if it's a 1-car gap, the rest of the run is playing catch up.
Yeah.
And it's all the excitement is gone. The disappointment is huge. So why should we continue with something that we believe can fix?
Yeah.
There is no reason.
It's back to basics.
Mm-hmm.
Every drift has to start with an initiation. So let's fix the basics, which is the run up and initiation.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so also what happens what happens when we do this is that we enable more people to compete. For example, having a straight cut gearbox with a sequential shifter, for example, is a huge advantage with the shift cut and stuff, like just wop, compared to having to get that clutch work in between every gear. And it's also less important with the final gear, what's it called, the differential.
Yeah, because you can gear the car for the run, not for the run up, right? Like that's a lot of drivers will change the gearing to make sure they get a good launch.
Exactly. Yeah. So I think we can agree. And now I'm sorry.
Oh, I was going to say I still, like, with this, maybe I'm missing a part of it. I still feel like there is an opportunity for somebody to gap somebody off the run up. Is there any way we're mitigating that? Like, is there like a speed trap or something where it's like, you have to get to this line and be 60 kilometers an hour or something?
No, but there's different lines. Different radiuses for lead and chase driver.
Okay.
So basically, we create this situation where the lead is going to be slower.
Huh. All right. I like it. Mm-hmm. My brain is like going, I don't want to like reveal too much. My brain's going like a million miles a minute to be like, okay, what does this look like? How do we do it? Okay, what's the track layout now? Like,
now you pair that with a theoretical 22 laps practice per driver. Mm-hmm. Right? They have all the time in the world to get ready for the moment when they have to shine.
Yeah.
And we are giving them all the opportunities we can give them. The rest is up to them. But we can do our absolute best to set them up to produce the best show they have ever produced.
Mm-hmm. I do agree that focusing on making the battles as amazing as they can be means that the show is that. And I think that's something that people forget about. I think that's something that like show promoters or event organizers sometimes forget about, that like the closer we can make the tandem, right? Because at the end of the day, that's what it is.
Yes.
It's
that's what drifting is.
Yeah, it's how close can we put cars to walls and cars to cars? Whatever we are doing, we need to focus on making sure that the cars are as close to the wall or the car is as close to the other car as possible. And everything else, excitement, social media, driver passion, all of those things all boil down to how close did we get to this other thing? And that's it. That is what drifting is.
And that brings us back to this prediction thing too, right? If we know what the lead is going to do, if that's well explained and everyone understands what's happening, then we're going to get better battles, because now we get to take those chances, and it's not just stupid to do that big dive, you know.
Are we going to have like a summit before where all the drivers have to like sit, and then Olof is there like just explaining and being like, listen, I'm going to teach you all the tricks I can in the next hour and a half, and you just take notes, and I'll send you a video, and I expect everyone to be perfect now and the judges to have the worst time because all the runs are going to be phenomenal.
Well, as I said earlier, like because this is all basics, if we control certain basics, we can get the show to look in a certain way.
Right.
And that also means actually something we haven't talked about. I wanted to ask you this. This is one of those where you can set off the keyboard warriors. I usually say that driving style doesn't matter if you want to win.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah. Let me ask you this: where did drifting start?
Japan. I mean, depending on how you.
Depending on what
course of history.
How did it start in Japan?
Mountain roads. Trying to get from one spot to another as quickly and stylishly as possible.
So that is a part of it, but it actually started with a racing driver that got kind of bored at racing because he was so good. So he started sliding the car, and that's where the inspiration came for the drifters in the mountain. So what we're competing in is actually a driving style of racing.
Right.
And if you want to win at this, you have to figure out what that driving style is. That's why you go to spotters' help, because you have to figure out what the idea is from the judges of what the driving style is. And then you have to perform that on the track.
Interesting. I think, yeah, no, I understand what you're getting at, where we see some drivers that may drive with more angle or, what you would consider a different style, but that doesn't, if that doesn't align with what the judges are looking for, then you're not going to win the event. I mean, there are ways to utilize that quote unquote style, but ultimately there are times where, like an example is like, let's say you hang the car out, you throw way more angle into a transition, which is great because you might shake the chase driver. But if the judges go, well, you're decelling too much in a spot because you have throw more angle and you cause an incident or you choke up the other driver, well, now you've lost because you didn't do the quote unquote style that the judges are looking for.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So if we're clear with what style we're looking for, that means that it's way easier for everyone to predict it. And then we can be closer and the show looks better and everyone's more happy.
That's
it sounds so much because that's why I have to explain it. I had this fight with a friend of mine. I told him that, and he was like, "Yeah, but then everything looks the same." No, it will not, because none of the driver is a robot. No one will be doing this the same way than the other ones. It will definitely not be boring. I can guarantee that. And if they all are really good at it, it will just get more spectacular, right? But it sounds like we would want that everyone is doing the same thing. Yeah, we want that, but it will not happen, right? Yeah. It's like the drivers are drivers. They have their own challenges in their driving style, in their setup, in whatever. But we do everything we can to provide them with the best possible starting point here.
Yeah.
So that's also something we talk about with car setup, right? What we're looking for, what we're going to win with, is the output, right? What the car is doing, what we visually see, right? And when you change settings of a car, you're going to have to change inputs to create that output. But it's still the output that matters.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Well, no idea what you're talking about.
No, I get it. Where it's like I'm trying to think of like a good way to correlate in a easy to explain way. That's the hard part.
Yeah, but let's say like this: everyone have probably tried two cars at least, or maybe changed their own car. Maybe changed tow, for example.
Yeah.
So because everything is related, right? There's in general not that big of a range of rate to angle that we can use. Because if we screw that up, we're going to have less or more speed. So the car is still going to have to use a certain rate of angle. But when you steer the steering wheel with less or more toe, you're going to get a very easy fast flick with the same amount of steering, or you're going to get a very slow one. So the input, the slow movement or the fast movement that you have to do to get the output, that might change. But what matters is what the judges see.
Yeah. So it's better to take. Yeah, I get what you're saying. I mean, the example my thought is like you're trying to move a box, right? If we really break this down to like the easiest, like most basic terms, and I'm my goal here is to get Marcel on the same page. So yeah. You've got a box on the floor, right? And you need to push that box to the other side of the room. So if you just slide it across the floor, you use, let's say, like 1 Newton of force, right? To push that box across the floor. But then you spray some water down on the floor. Now it only takes half a Newton of force to get to the same wall, right? The difference is how fast. So, you're using either less newtons to get there in the same amount of time, but if you use the same amount of newtons of force, you're going to get there twice as fast.
Yeah.
So by understanding what the goal is the goal to get the box to the other side of the room as quickly as possible or at the least amount of force. That's what they're being judged on. So we need to be very clear. Oh, we want you to get that box over there as fast as possible. Okay, well then I need to keep the same amount of force, but I need to change how much water I put on the floor. And that is what is going to dictate it, because that is the end goal. Like we don't care how you get there, figure that part out. But this is what we're judging you on. And the more that you change when it comes to, in this case, the box or the floor, that then has to start changing what you're doing as a driver. So if you already know your driving style, if you already know how you like to input the car, if you're going to be a twitchy driver or a smooth driver, you then need to start adapting the car around what you inherently know.
Okay, got it.
Once you start, if you just set the car and try to change as much as possible as the driver, you're going to create more mistakes because you're going to default back to what you know.
Yeah.
So if you just build the car and tune the car around what you already know, in a moment of panic, you're just going to go back to that and the car is going to be perfect for it. That's going to be the best way.
That's one way of doing it. And the other way of doing it is to actually learn how to drive a bunch of different cars and setups.
So what to do no matter the situation. A ton of toe in, not a ton of toe in, high pressure, low pressure. Yeah.
Because if you set up a car to do something, like you can make it rotate in a certain way. And the driver, let's say you go through a corner and then you're going to transition. So you clutch in to make a transition. That's going to grip up the rear and it's going to turn over, right? You can set up the car in that scenario where it rotates in different rates. So you can set this up until it works for the track. The problem is that if you're, again, in one of these situations where they crash a lot of cars on the tracks, you don't really have time to do that. So it's a way better bet to start with something you know, and then just drive better. Because you practice more.
You just have to drive better.
Yeah.
Yeah. Huh. Well, as much as I want to obviously keep diving into this, I know we are on the edge of getting into another very deep and long conversation.
Yeah. I think I don't have the attention span, to be fair, get into
I think it opens up a lot of deeper discussions. I still think, Olof, you need to start recording all of these sessions and letting people subscribe and stuff like that. Like even in the short conversations or the many videos that you've sent me, even the last 48 hours, the amount of information and knowledge that I've gained just by understanding some of these changes has been immense. And on my side of things, as somebody who has to see drifting in real time and speak to drifting in real time, it helps a ton to understand literally just the physics behind it, that like there are only so many things that we can do to get these cars to do the things we're asking them to do, and these drivers to do the things we're asking them to do. So I think I'm very excited to see and discuss more changes that are happening with Iron Drift King. And this is just a small taste of these small changes that will have massive repercussions, not just at the event, but in drifting in general. I don't want to overstate this or understate this, but I think there's going to be a lot of people from a lot of organizations and drivers that are going to watch this event just to understand and see what it's going to be like, because it will be a very different drift event than what you've experienced before.
Yes, 100%.
Yeah,
100%.
So
that's what we were aiming for, not to be different, but to do something great, right? It's working on it, I sometimes forget that, and now when I repeat it, the simple act of the run up, and how many reasons we had why we're doing it different. It's great, and it fills me with a lot of pride and joy to know that we do this to get a fantastic outcome for absolutely everyone involved. And we will deliver. It's still a hard amount of hard work and a lot of work ahead of us, even if it's now so close. We're 6 weeks out. 6.5. Yes.
Oh, Jesus. Yeah. I didn't even.
Yeah.
We're going to book a flight, man.
I know. But you just let me know. We have to get in contact about that. You see, that's what I mean, right? There's so many micro-managing tasks still. But no, we will get it done. And we're going to have a fantastic weekend with a lot of hopefully innovative and new ways of how to do drifting. And we have the chance to do it, so we have done it, and let's see what's the outcome. But I think we can all learn from it, one way or the other. Definitely.
Olof, any closing thoughts or anything you want to wrap up with?
No, not really. I think I think we got it pretty okay.
Well, thank you so much, not just for the time here today and getting all this organized, but thank you for what you've done to help teach and coach some of the greatest drivers and drivers that are coming up. I've seen a difference in both Rome and Freddie's driving firsthand. I've commented on it on the live stream, the difference between these drivers, and there's so many others, like you said, Max Heidrich, like there's so many more that are coming up. So if you are interested in working with Olof, we will have, some links down below. We'll have his Instagram that hopefully has already popped up on screen, but we'll make sure you can get in contact there. Just be prepared because it is intense. You have to be willing to accept that you don't know as much about drifting as you thought you did. That's what I've had to do. That's what Marcel's had to do. And be open to doing some things that you never thought to do, because that's what needs to happen to improve. So
yes, exactly.
Yeah, Marcel, thank you for making all this happen. You and I have very, very busy lives. Not that Olof doesn't, but we have some insane lives going on right now with things going on. And if you are listening, please make sure to grab your tickets. I know things are moving quite well. If you're interested in making the trip over, if you're not from Germany or not in Europe, I cannot stress enough. It is 100% worth it. Take a week, go explore Germany.
We make it easy. We have hotel and shuttle packages available. So you just arrive at the hotel, and that's the last time you have to see your car on the whole event. So you get shuttled back and forth right at the front door. You don't have to walk far or anything. You have your fantastic breakfast. It's at the Radisson Blue Hotel. You enjoy your breakfast. You jump into the bus and off to the action, and then back in the night you go back, and you don't have to worry about nothing else. So if you're not from Germany, and you want to have it comfortable, that's the way to go. So yeah, cool. No, please, everyone, come enjoy that with us, and back to the work now, right? This is all I can say.
Yeah,
very
back
busy
to
still.
6 weeks. Jesus.
Thank you for making it happening so early for you. We know it's very early for you.
I'm usually up pretty early.
It was a comfortable time for me, actually.
Yeah, it's tough. I mean, this is trying to arrange 3 people with 3 crazy schedules is never easy, and I'm glad we got it done. And looking forward to the next one where we can maybe start to discuss some of the next big updates, things like track layout, judging, some of the cool stuff that's going on with drivers.
Judging is man. We have.
That's a big one.
There's a new judge, by the way. We have added one more. Yeah.
Jeez.
We're now at 6 judges.
That's a lot of judges. Where are we going to put them all?
Yeah, but it was worth adding that person. It's a very well-known person in the world of drifting, I can guarantee.
I'm looking forward to it. Well, thank you everybody for listening or watching at home. Please make sure follow Olof, get your tickets for Iron Drift King. Check out Parts 33 that's helping making this whole thing happen. Yeah, I think that's about it. So we'll catch everybody on the next one.
All righty. Thank you so much, guys.